Number 10. Corruption. One of the things we learn in our fight against William Afton is that he seeks to corrupt other animatronics, even good animatronics like Glamrock Freddy, who is pretty much our ally throughout the game and ultimately wants to help us get out of the Pizzaplex safely. In the final boss fight, Afton in his current in-game form will attempt to take control of Glamrock Freddy, and we have to try and harm him to prevent him from doing so. You know that he was successful when Freddy's eyes glow purple. If this happens, he will attempt to harm instead of help Gregory, aka you. Number 9. An army of animatronics. While you can try to prevent Glamrock Freddy from becoming corrupted, there are some animatronics that you can't really save from Afton's influence. Eventually, Glamrock Chica, Roxanne Wolf, and Montgomery Gator will all join him in his attempt to attack Gregory. The Blob, or I guess the Freddy amalgamation if you prefer, also seems to be in league with Afton, at least initially in the game, although they are not specifically controlled by Afton, which means they either simply want to join Afton's cause because they believe in it for some reason, or have their own reasons for lashing out at young Gregory. The other animatronics don't seem to be in control of their behavior and are more like William Afton's puppets, completely controlled and willed to cause harm by Afton himself, likely going against their own initial programming. Number 8. Hunter. While later on Afton mainly relies on his influence over the other animatronics to do his bidding, initially he was involved, possibly directly, in taking out any Fazbear employees who came to investigate just what he was up to in the tunnels below the Pizzaplex. Large quantities of power were being drained down there, and when employees were sent to investigate, none of them managed to ever return apparently. This implies that they were all killed, likely by Afton himself in his new form as Burntrap, or some lesser form of him perhaps as he bided his time becoming Burntrap, improving his appearance and gaining more and more power. Improving his appearance. Ugh. It's not really improved, he's pretty gross. And as he gained more and more power, literally with electrical power, and on an influential scale. Number 7. He survived. So obviously if you have played Security Breach or watched any of your favorite YouTubers or streamers play it at this point, you know that William Afton managed to survive and make it into the game. Not only that, but his physical body even manages to somehow be around. I know, I'm like, isn't this thing completely destroyed at this point? Apparently not. It shows up once more fused with an animatronic suit, managing to have survived all the awful things that have happened to it, like being spring-locked and burned alive. I think he was burned alive twice actually, and also possibly possessed or cursed, depending on which continuity you subscribe to. Though it should be noted that this is probably the most decayed and worse for wear we've seen William Afton look in the flesh. Number 6. Burntrap. This version of William Afton is known as Burntrap. Burntrap is an amalgamation of a bunch of different animatronics, and I believe we actually found the name Burntrap through hacking the game and through looking at the file names. Burntrap is actually a withered spring Bonnie suit that also has endoskeleton parts from Springlock, Glamrock, and Nightmare animatronic builds as well. Of course, the corpse of William is also permanently bonded with this suit as well, and much of his corpse beneath is visible because of just how withered the suit is. Very little of the suit is still visible, and you can even see all of Afton's skeletal looking gum exposed bottom jaw, as the suit no longer has its bottom jaw attached. Ew. Number 5. Trailer lines. When fans looked into the files belonging to Burntrap within the game, they learned that there was actually a ton of content stored there that simply wasn't used at all in Security Breach, at least as far as we know right now at this moment in time when I'm recording this. However, this content was designed and programmed into his character, it just was never used. Among this content were 2 lines featured in one of the Security Breach trailers that many fans suspected belonged to William Afton himself. Well, it turns out that apparently we were right about that. However, while the lines were found within his files, they were never uttered in the actual game. Either they were put there with the intention of being used, but an opportunity never really presented itself that made sense, or they were used and then later they were cut from the game for some reason. Among them, I believe, was the line, "You will do as I say, you will bring me what I want, and if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn." Unfortunate, because that line was honestly something I wanted to know more about in terms of how it played into the plot and then the overall lore of the franchise. Like, what does William Afton want? Who is burning? Which 2 people? Is there more than 2? Number 4. The Ruins. Where did William Afton as Burntrap come from? Well, it seems in the game that Vanny was tasked with recovering his body, digging up the ruins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, which the Mega Pizzaplex happens to have built on top of. Recruiting the Glamrock animatronics against their will, she brings them to the ruins of Freddy Fazbear's and has them dig something up. Likely that something is William Afton's tattered corpse. It's gotta be really tattered at this point. That is how he is able to return with Vanny's help and some convenient construction with the Pizzaplex being built on top of the pizza place. Although this likely was also part of his greater plot as Glitchtrap. Fazbear may have still held the deed to that land and, they decided that they should just make use of it instead of selling that lot and then buying a new one to build on. Makes sense. Although I imagine they would have had to buy more land around it as well, because the Pizzaplex is massive. Number 3, from whence he came. While the blob initially seems to be allied with Burntrap, as it also strikes out at Gregory, we later learn that this might not actually be the case. The blob is the one who ends up grabbing Burntrap when he tries to escape as the cave and tunnel system begins to collapse, depending on which ending you get and what's going on. It seems the blob either did not want to be left alone or actually has feelings of pain and vengeance attached to William Afton and Burntrap. Burntrap's fate remains uncertain, but it's definitely implied that he is killed during the cave-in, and likely so is the blob. Of course, this is the unkillable and seemingly immortal William Afton we're talking about, so there are also many reasons to believe that this is not the end for him, as, he always comes back. Always. Number 2, death animation. While Burntrap being overtaken by the Freddy amalgamated blob / Elizabeth / just the blob, whatever you want to call it, and one of the endings seems to imply that he has died, or at the very least has been defeated, we don't actually get to see his death happen. We just see him basically pulled away by this blob as Glamrock Freddy and Gregory manage to escape while the underground tunnel and cave system caves in. However, through fans hacking the game, they've claimed that they have found some unused Burntrap files, and within that an unused death animation for the character. There could still be a way to unlock those unused files, of course, as it's still early days for this game, and there are likely tons of clues and hidden lore still left uncovered as of yet. After all, this game is massive, but the other option is that Burntrap's death was initially going to be shown in one of the endings, but was ultimately cut to leave it more ambiguous as to whether or not he might return, and whether or not he actually survived. Perhaps they wanted to kill him off initially, but then decided they'd rather leave the option open for Afton to return once again. I personally think they maybe were like, we could make Vanny this big character and then say goodbye to Afton, and then they got cold feet as they were getting near the end of that. They're like, oh, people won't like it if Afton's gone. Of course, all of the people that have played the game are like, more Vanny, less Afton. Number 1, no jump scare. Although all the other animatronic antagonists in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach have their own jump scare if they manage to catch you, Burntrap is the only animatronic who doesn't seem to have one. This is likely because, well, he doesn't really catch you himself, but instead gets other animatronics to lash out at you, preferring to use them to get to you instead of pursuing you as Gregory himself. This just goes to show us how much this character has evolved and really grown in terms of his power, becoming the mastermind who pulls the strings as opposed to doing his own dirty work. And I know what you're all gonna say, he's always been the mastermind, Amanda. You're right, he has been, but I just mean, remember initially he used to kill people? That was his thing. And now he's like, nah, everyone else just kill people for me. I'm tired. I'm like, look at me, I'm barely a human anymore. I'm just a little bit of bone and a little bit of gums. That's about it. Number 10, I always come back. While it seems like William Afton as Burntrap may finally be gone for good, he also might not be. After all, this is William freaking Afton we're talking about here, and the guy has pretty much become immortal, in my eyes at least. He has survived being spring-locked in a spring Bonnie suit, being locked up for years, burned to a crisp, possibly being possessed or haunted by one of his victims, perhaps having his consciousness uploaded into a game, and beyond. But just because it seems like the amalgamated Freddy blob finally took him out doesn't mean that is what happened. Burntrap could have somehow escaped his seemingly deadly fate and managed to get out of the Pizzaplex. Just where he would go next and what he would get up to, we don't really know. But we know it probably wouldn't be anything good. And he's probably up to something. He's probably out there right now. Number 9, Fazbear has the blueprints. When it comes to many of the animatronics that we've encountered in this franchise, it seems to have been implied that either William Afton or his partner Henry Emily in some capacity, or some combination thereof, were the ones responsible for creating said robotic beings. Now that both Henry and William are seemingly gone, however, it is interesting to see Fazbear apparently thriving with both their own meta game that appears to exist within the universe, with help wanted, and also with their new establishment, the Freddy Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex. Considering we also have seen new animatronics here, it must mean that Fazbear Entertainment is now the one behind making these animatronics, and it seems to be implied that as such they have secured the blueprints for the original animatronics and were able to use them to create new ones like Montgomery Gator and Roxanne Wolf. Either that or these are like old animatronics that they've updated, but I feel like it's implied that these are completely fresh, so they made them themselves. This means that William and Henry are really no longer needed with this company, although we don't know if either remains attached at all financially to Fazbear, or even attached to their founding story or their history. However, this also opens up the possibility of someone else at the head of Fazbear becoming corrupt and turning evil. Maybe there'll be a new William Afton one day. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, I don't know what else we could pull from this game about William Afton, but I'm sure there's lots of things we still haven't even found yet. Be sure to let us know you want more lists on William Afton by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Cult of Afton runs Fazbear Entertainment. Speaking of the possible ulterior motives of Fazbear Entertainment and their still possible connection to Afton and Emily, just why was the Mega Pizzaplex built on top of the ruins of another Freddy Fazbear location? While Vanny seems to be the only loyal follower of William Afton that we see in Security Breach, is it possible that there are corrupt forces working from within the Fazbear Entertainment company, and that Vanny isn't the only one? That they are the ones who arranged it so that the Pizzaplex would be built in the first place on top of these ruins, and even placed Vanny/Vanessa there so that she could recover Afton's body in secret. I'm just saying, there are a lot of spooky coincidences that seem to have happened that seem, well, just too bizarre to actually be coincidences. Number 7. New voice actor. An interesting detail when it comes to the character's evolution in Security Breach is that it seems like Michael Curtis was going to be the voice of William Afton. From the trailers, that is what was implied. At least that's definitely what I was picking up on. And yet before, the main voice actor for William Afton, the one that we'd come to know from Sister Location at least, was PJ Haywood. The even stranger thing is if William Curtis was meant to play the role of William Afton, and the lines he uttered in the trailer, which hackers have claimed in the files are actually linked to Burntrap within the game, then why didn't he actually get to do those lines in the games? It seems like there must have been a directional shift when it came to the content that it was suggested we were going to get. It seems, based on the trailers, that Afton, Vanny, and possibly the security guard Vanessa were all going to play more important and prevalent roles in the game. It also kind of seems like we could have gone one of two ways, with either like Vanessa helping us or Freddy helping us. Or maybe there is a version of the game where they both help us, I don't know. And yet we didn't see as much from any of these characters as we thought we would. Or at least we didn't see what we thought we would from them. So were the whole scenes that Curtis recorded lines for tossed? Or was the direction changed much earlier on? Is Curtis's voice really even meant to be William Afton? Or is this supposed to be some other character? I know this is more questions than answers, but this is another case where knowledge kind of just leads to more theories and speculations than any correct answers. Number 6. Maybe no longer British? The really interesting thing about having William Afton potentially recast in Security Breach is that it implies that he somehow may have lost his British accent, at least based on the voice that we heard. When PJ Haywood voiced William Afton in Sister Location, he was distinctly British. This was a character who definitely had a British accent. And yet if Michael Curtis is doing a voice for William Afton in the trailer, and those unused files were found under the header of Burntrap in the games, he somehow, I guess, lost his British accent? So is he British or is he American? Or is he from somewhere else? It's possible that being burned severely might have also altered his vocal cords, or just that over time his accent diminished or changed, which can happen. I mean, after all, when we heard him in Sister Location, I think it was mainly in like flashback stuff, so I don't know, maybe it's been a long time and now all of a sudden his accent is gone. After all, dialects come from what we hear around us and are built over time through speech patterns based on those sounds. So if he had been in the US for, I guess, a long period of time, it is possible his voice could have changed. Then he could still be British, but you know, with an American accent, because his British accent sort of faded away. It should be noted though that the older that you are, the more unlikely it becomes that your voice would change like this. Which of course also begs the question, how old is William Afton anyways? Do we even know? Number 5. Rescued at the last moment. It's very unlikely that William Afton is actually dead. Although we talked about that being what seems to happen on the part 1 of this list, when it comes to Afton's fate and him being attacked by the Freddy amalgamated blob and pulled back deeper into the ruins as everything caved in around them, it's also just as likely that the blob was maybe saving Afton instead. After all, while the blob may be a monster, they also seemingly lashed out along with Burntrap originally, and they are after all an amalgamation of his creations. They also tried to kill Gregory. You can die from the blob. Freddy is kind of like William's child as well, and it's possible that even while horribly disfigured, they still felt an allegiance to their creator. Perhaps at the last minute the blob is trying to save Afton. Although it looks like they are pulling Burntrap further in towards this cave-in, they could also know of an escape route that was simply safer than the one Gregory and Glamrock Freddy seem to be taking, and they could be attempting to pull Afton towards safety instead so that he could escape and live another day. Although, to be honest, I feel like he's lived enough days. However, this would possibly allow Afton to return in future games. Number 4. William Afton's final creation? Where did the blob come from? Well, we don't have a concrete answer at this point, as with so many things in the FNAF lore, some fans have been pointing to the books for answers. On Reddit, one user known as Pickletrip Jr. in the Five Nights at Freddy's subreddit responded to a post centered on the blob that was started up by user Spiritual Distance 168, where they brought up the fact that in Fourth Closet, the version that we see of William Afton there is actually experimenting with melting down the remaining animatronics and bonding them and the souls trapped within them together. He's doing this somewhere underground as well, which sounds, I don't know, pretty familiar to me based on Security Breach. If Fourth Closet is connected to this narrative, then it seems like it might be hinting that William may have actually had a hand in the creation of the blob. Either that or it's Pizzeria Simulator. I don't know. Number 3. Elizabeth Afton and William Afton team up. It's also very possible that Elizabeth Afton and William Afton have both managed to somehow live on and continue to survive. Heck, even Michael Afton could be, I don't know, mixed in there somewhere for all we know. While Elizabeth Afton was supposed to have been freed in spirit at the end of Pizzeria Simulator, the blob seems to be an amalgamation of many Freddys and all the other animatronics that were burned at the ending of that game. That would include Circus Baby as well. What if the blob struggled with whether or not to fight William, as within the tangled mess there were various consciousnesses with various allegiances, but in the end Circus Baby won out and decided to save him because she's still maybe part Elizabeth? The fact that the blob even seems to have some kind of will of its own seems to imply that the spirits within those animatronics somehow lingered and were not fully, at least, freed, which could mean we could see the return of Circus Baby teaming up with her dad in the future. Sounds terrifying. Or we could simply see a return of the blob fully amalgamated with Burntrap as well. A very permanent, kind of terrifying team up. Number 2. 99.9% immortal. At this point, I think we can say that William Afton has achieved immortal status. I'm saying it. Let's get a stamp or something for this guy. Immortal. 99.9% immortal at least. The guy has come back from everything, and even when we thought he was finally gone, he still survived via some kind of, I don't know, ID chip in a suit? Afton ends up having his soul uploaded into the game Help Wanted and is somehow able to reunite said soul with his very, very, very dead at this point, crispy and falling apart body. How do you even use that body? At this point, I'm convinced that Afton has become a supernatural being because as long as his soul or a remnant of it is still around, he just can't be destroyed. Also, how do you kill someone's soul? I don't know how to do that. That is probably the key to defeating him at this point, to be honest. But I don't know how you kill someone's soul. I don't think we've got to that point yet in these games. Number 1. More powerful than ever. The crazy thing when it comes to William Afton's appearance in Security Breach, the real crazy thing, another crazy thing I guess I should say at this point, and his move from Glitchtrap to Burntrap is that even while in his Burntrap form, he still seems to possess digital powers. What does this mean? Possibly that we have an even more powerful version of William Afton on our hands moving forward. Not only is he pretty much immortal and has proven to be virtually unkillable, but now he has both digital corruption powers and also possesses a physical form. I mean, it's a rough physical form, but it's still there. We also know that William Afton is likely some kind of charming figure who can easily influence others, as this has been implied in earlier canon within the games, and in the books. I mean, he must be charming in some capacity. He ended up with kids somehow, and he also ended up as one of the heads of a successful franchise, semi-successful franchise I guess, despite being a murderer, right? How did he do that? Also, a lot of people that are serial killers tend to be like weirdly charming, so if you ever meet someone that's a little too charming, I'm just saying, watch out.
10. Ultimate Custom Night. Now that Security Breach has released and messed with the timeline once more, we know that Ultimate Custom Night was supposed to be like, during. Okay, look, we know where it's intended to be, or at least where it had to be because of these new revelations. The original concept was that it was William's personal hell, but the man in room 1280 made some people believe that it was him, like what he was seeing in a coma, like how Crying Child was in a coma for the main gameplay of FNAF 4. But now we know that Ultimate Custom Night is simply what William is seeing while he's unconscious in the recharge station. It's the only thing that really makes sense if we think about it, because you can't really go to hell if, you know, you're not dead, or if your soul is possessing an animatronic. You kind of need your soul to not have a tether for Crowley to snatch it up and drag it down to the infinite waiting line that is hell. So he kind of can't be in hell until he's actually gone. And at 9, impossible. While Thanos might be inevitable, William should be impossible. Or, okay, well, maybe William's not impossible, but Glitchtrap at this point certainly should be. With everything we've seen in these games, possession and anything having to do with such mostly comes from a dead person, or someone who soon dies after pouring their agony into something. So how could Glitchtrap be a thing if William still has his body and the Springtrap suit? Unless Help Wanted takes place after Security Breach, which is also impossible because the ending of Help Wanted is what causes us to be able to free Vanny in the good ending, or I guess the best ending. And because, you know, Princess Quest was ported from a mobile game into arcade cabinets in this one, so after Security Breach we know that Glitchtrap should be impossible, and things got complicated yet again. Great. Innate virus. While Glitchtrap may seemingly be impossible, we do know that William in his robot form does have some form of coded virus that he can use and control, since he starts trying to take over Freddy basically instantly. And if that's the case, this could explain Glitchtrap and subsequently Vanny, because if Glitchtrap was just like William holding his hand to the game while it was being played or something, it kind of gets rid of the whole 2 versions of Afton thing that seemingly still mind boggles me. So it could be an explanation, but it would also imply, however, that the Vanny version of Vanessa is in fact a robot, and it would seem like there are 2 versions if we look at the rooftop ending and the Security Breach office scene where we need to escape before Vanny gets to us, because if we look at the TVs, whoever's talking can be seen, meaning that Vanessa would have to have changed awfully quickly into her Vanny suit to pull off the switch in this time. Plus it explains how he's able to control her, because, you know, she's a robot. I can't really be controlled by a computer virus, so... Well, I mean, I probably could. And at 7, future villain. After the canon ending, the blob ends up grabbing William, and then we don't know what happens to him, okay? There's unused death animations for Afton in the game files, but they are unused, so we can't really take them as canon. But in the books, Elizabeth leaves Afton for dead, so maybe that's the case here. Like, the blob stops him from leaving and assures his death, like, just, like, wrings out his neck. I mean, it's certain that the antagonist wanted to be left obscure since we kinda killed it at figuring things out this time around. But with someone new coming to take over, it's always a good idea to have multiple directions for them to go. Like how they can pretty much go anywhere with the Spider-Man movies now thanks to No Way Home. So while we don't know for sure how Afton fits into the next game, or even if he does, after Security Breach we know that we could be seeing him again very soon. Depending on how soon the next game comes out, at least. We expect too much from the 87-day sequel that started off this thing. Scott, you shouldn't have done that. I mean, I get why you did it, because like, bite of 87, but still, you shouldn't have done it. And at 6, animatronic. I've denied that William Afton is an animatronic forever. I never put him on the scariest FNAF animatronics list or whatnot because I didn't believe that he was one. He was a guy controlling a suit being kept alive by the one you should not have killed. Thus, him being a man with robotic enhancements and not an animatronic. However, now, after Security Breach, it looks like I can finally stop saying that, since from the looks of it, Burntrap is actually dead. And while this could mean that he's allowed to be Glitchtrap, William is still trying to take control of Freddy, thus us knowing that he's possessed that animatronic suit like the original 5 missing kids possessed the original 5 animatronics. It's kind of poetic, since while his jaw is visible, the rest of his body seems to have burnt up in the FNAF 6 fire, resulting in his weight being supported by the endoskeleton. That just kind of proves that he's possessed the robot. Which also makes sense with the way that he walks, since now, like, he shambles, and because he's not used to walking without the support of his full body and the animatronic, so like, you know. He was also like a 90-year-old man at this point, so I can get why he shambles. He's fully possessed the animatronic now. Burntrap is the first version of Springtrap or Scraptrap or William Afton that is an animatronic. Halfway through into number 5, the inside. We know at this point that Afton has to have someone inside Fazbear Entertainment still working in his best interests. The suggestion for Vanessa as Night Guard came from the top, meaning that they're high up, as we learned from one of the lore duffel bags, and influential enough in the company to build the Pizzaplex on top of the FNAF 6 pizzeria so that William wouldn't be randomly found by some crazy kids looking for a thrill in a pizzeria. They'd be found by a crazy kid hiding inside an animatronic in a pizzeria. Since that sort of thing happens way too often in this series. Which begs the additional question, is this because they're related? Is this because they're related, they know each other, or is Afton controlling more than one person with this virus? But either way, with everything that's lining up for him, there is no way it's an accident. Oh no, not in this series. In any series, I would still find this to be a little too much, but in FNAF, there is a 0.000 negative 1% chance that this is a coincidence, okay? There's no way that this kind of thing worked out this well for this character especially. Hell no. And at 4, recharge. William needing to recharge is certainly something that's interesting from a game perspective now that we know more about what's been going on. Perhaps the recharge stations were built because Afton needed one, and the horrible animatronics needing to get in a recharge station every hour is because William needed an excuse to have one actually made so that they could bring it down for him. Because like, I'm sure it took more than an hour to dig that tunnel, and there is a recharge station in that area because of that. But William needs to recharge now seemingly, making me think that we won't really have to deal with him for much longer until like the MCU decides that FNAF is also in the Marvel universe, and then Afton gets an arc reactor, because that's definitely gonna happen at this point. Disney's gonna be like, FNAF, I want it, and then the next person's gonna sell it, and then boom, MCU. Getting close to the end in number 3, escape. After security breach, we also know for a fact that Afton did not escape the FNAF 6 pizzeria like everyone was assuming, because he was in front of the flames while all the other animatronics were behind it or inside it. Now, do I think that he tried to leave? Yes. But do I think that he might have intentionally stayed? Maybe. More on that soon. But we know that Afton, along with the other animatronics from FNAF 6 that are now part of the blob, did not make it out of the simulated pizzeria, since that is the pizzeria ruins that we see before making our way down to the actual like area where Afton is. Like the Freddy Fazbear's pizza we enter after getting out of the elevator is the proof we need. Notice the rectangular stage with a smaller one next to it, the plate colors, the stools, the tables, and even the floor look the same. It also explains why we can find more retro and other posters around, because we also had access to those in FNAF 6. And ultimately, in at number 2, the man in room 1280. After the events of security breach, I think that it's actually finally making sense of the whole man in room 1280 thing. My original issue with this was that if William still had a physical form in security breach and was in a charging station, how could the whole ultimate custom night in man room 1280 to Glitchtrap possessing Vanny really work? And while I don't have an explanation for how William was both sentient code and alive in FNAF 9, or alive air quotes, I have worked out a timeline of events here. Perhaps William wasn't ever sentient code at all, and it was just some form of remnant or agony infused virus that was able to infect minds. But also, the events of the games and stories must now be FNAF 6, Ultimate Custom Night, Security Breach, with Man in Room 1280 taking place after Security Breach. Ultimate Custom Night would no longer be his coma fever dream, it would instead be what his mind is doing before we waking up in Security Breach, since coming out of that recharge station would end up being him beating 50-20 mode, unless we're totally wrong about what Ultimate Custom Night is, in which case, I have no fucking clue what's going on. But yeah, so Man in Room 1280 is what happened to William after the blob gets him. At least, that's the closest thing we can say right now. And finally, in at number 1, lied about Remnant. In yesterday's video, I talked about how what we know about Remnant must be a lie, and the explanation of that, link in the iCard. However, the thing is, 3 times we've tried to burn William, and 3 times he's survived. And while that could just be the whole he always comes back thing, this time around, we see that everyone from the FNAF 6 fire seemingly survived. While they are together in the form of the blob, there are still the masks of the puppet and baby present inside it, meaning that the other animatronics also came back. But as far as we know, that shouldn't have been possible. But that's because now we know that William lied about being able to destroy Remnant with fire, as a way I'm sure to make Henry think that there was a way to stop him. But William knew that this wouldn't really kill him, and he got exactly what he wanted. Even got Henry to kill himself in the fire as well, to make sure that nobody remembered this place. And if William knew that fire wouldn't kill him, but heard Henry was going to stay, why wouldn't he stay? Like, if he left, Henry would have left too. And if he is able to hear the final speech like we assume, considering how Henry tells him to go to hell, he would also have heard, "And for you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you, blah blah blah, I'm assuming you're staying, so am I," okay? William knew that he wouldn't die, but the person hunting him would have died. That's an easy way to finish off your longest adversary. You just stay put, you know you're not gonna die, you're gonna suffer a little bit, but you know you're not gonna permanently die, and you're good. F***ing genius.
In at 10, animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the start. Thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And that they were built with special containment chambers inside to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, which we see the Funtimes actually have in their blueprints from FNAF 6. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, even maybe before his kids were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which is not simple at all. If anyone like cosplays Vanessa, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. Possibly killed wife. This hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so it's currently not canon. Many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise, even though technically we know nothing about her, and she could still be alive for all we know. Many people consider her to have died in either a car crash or because William killed her, and those are like the most common thoughts on the matter. Although her dying in a car accident thing came from like a FNAF original music video that was probably using Minecraft characters that is in no way canon to the series. Like, I've had people yell at me in my DMs telling me that it's canon that she died in a car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even canon that she died, really, but the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic parts filled bucket. Since it's only a possibility though, it's only number 9. If it gets confirmed, I'm more than willing to bump it up higher, because like statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should have been on her guard. And it ain't missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's like the inciting moment for the whole series, but I think it's worth calling out at least number 8. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated but were never able to find the bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives, alright. It just so happened to also be the end of their lives. And not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in this series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake, right? And at 7, stored his daughter. While we know Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter into an animatronic testing facility. That seems a bit too far if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us as Michael down there in the first place, and then we get shoved full of entered bits so that they can escape. Did William know about that plan? Unsure, because like in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her dad proud. So was that William's intention to like send us down there so Baby could get out? And if that was the case, why lock her down in there in the first place? I mean, like if she was your daughter, why not have her just like chill around the house, right? Like in the books, Baby is able to transform between Baby and like a human looking animatronic at will. So why not add this to that version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little more messed up. But like more like you in the long run, right? I don't know. This family is messed the hell up, and nothing makes sense. And at 6, lied about Remnant. Now, this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full explanation as to why I think Afton was the one who lied about Remnant, go check out that video linked up in the iCard. But I'm going to wrap this up quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form, so how can it be molten but also be burnt by by fire. It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he could be killed by fire so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him, so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying, since literally every time he's been caught in the fire he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and entered in FNAF 6 as we see from the blob in Security Breach. Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy pops up into your VR headset then takes over your body without your consent, so now you end up killing for him. That's kinda messed up. Actually, no, not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then causing them to make a rabbit costume so you're still a furry is a whole other set of kinks that I don't even want to talk about. And then, she knows that there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William has been saying to her, and she's now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police, and then lets that darker half track him down. And at 4 later that night. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it, since in the game files the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids, reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break his window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too. Technically speaking, anyone we encounter can be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also you're only alive because everyone you've ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and is going to yell at his son who's been in his room all day. Like, god damn, bro, how much residual anger do you have suppressed inside your body? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics: Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is that he didn't get caught for it. Yeah, he didn't. The animatronics smelt like death, started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. He put these bodies in animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless it was his way of displaying his kills or something, like some of the crime shows like to mention. How some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did, since it helps them feel more powerful or something, fuels their ego. Like maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, William could be using that as an ego boost, which is messed up. And also ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory, aside from the whole him killing before his kids died thing. Also, how did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? Penultimately, in at number 2, First Victim. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological clues that they could use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst ways possible. He starts killing off kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something even I fear. I'm not a parent, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put that down. I'd be doing it myself, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing and I don't even have someone that I could, in theory, make a daughter with. And finally, in at number 1, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is gotten his own kids killed. Sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte got Fredbear's clothes, which resulted in him having to open up circus babies, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other fun times, which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing the animatronic. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic used in the new Freddy Fazbears, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a spring lock failure due to all the spring locks being active, since it was in animatronic mode, not suit mode, so there was nothing to fail, meaning that he had to have been crushed by the power of his jaw. And while you could argue that it was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth was overpowered? As the suit technician, William knew what was going on and intentionally souped up the jaw power. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with innards and then letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. An intense, difficult setup. One of the reasons William is still alive is just the sheer difficulty that would come with setting up a new villain or killer for the series. William has already been long established, and it wouldn't really make sense for another killer to start unless they were somehow worshipping William. But thanks to Vanny being known as the reluctant follower, we know that she isn't doing this herself. The implications of reluctance means that she isn't doing this out of her own free will, but rather being forced or coaxed into doing it because they have something over them, are threatening them, or are just controlling them using weird mind tech or something similar. The difficulty in setting up a new villain without William as a starting point would just probably break the lore. And a 9, the arm. The arm shown at the end of the FNAF Security Breach gameplay trailer has to be William Afton. The purple reflected on the arm as well as the purple throughout the entire trailer all over the Pizzaplex is obviously a connection. Scott doesn't mess around with colors. But the main issue here is, what do we qualify as alive? The memory of the person, if their soul is possessing a game, are they alive? If their consciousness is preserved, are they alive? These things matter when we're talking about a series like this, where Security Breach could very well be one of the games within the FNAF universe, one that the in-game Scott stand-in created. However, if that is the case and we consider Afton keeping his consciousness alive inside a video game as him being alive, it will still count. This is very complicated and it all depends on how we define it, so we should probably define it. In at 8, The Man in Room 1280. The Man in Room 1280 is the final story from Bunny Call, the 5th and the original final Fazbear Frights book. It's about a man with severe burns all over his body being in the hospital, being kept alive by the spirit of one of his victims. In this case, a child. The man is clearly meant to represent William, even asking to be brought to the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center before he dies, presumably to latch his soul onto a hard drive so he can get scanned into the game and come help wanted. This man is clearly William, and the nurses know what he did. Once he gets to the distribution center, William collapses and explodes into a mass of bone and flesh. It's quite gruesome actually. This has to be William, and considering how it's meant to be the final book in the series, it would help serve as a prologue to Help Wanted, which only helps to solidify that William is still alive. And at 7, Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap is the virus that got scanned into the game we tested in Help Wanted before the game we play begins. We're just told that he showed up one day and drove Jeremy mad, but I don't think that's the case. I think Glitchtrap was already a character designed in-game. He has a major role in the story, being present in the game's canonical pizza party ending, luring you behind the curtain and stuffing you into the Freddy suit. Without him being there, if you still went into the suit, we would think that we just climbed in, since we see no other killer in the game. No other purple guy stand-in. So Glitchtrap would have had to have been there, and William just took control of the character and replaced their AI with his intelligence, meaning that even before William was scanned in, his memory and the things he's done were being remembered and kept alive. And at 6, Spirit Backup. Now that William has created a sort of spirit backup, is it possible that he's now immortal, existing in the realm of the game world? If he leaves, will that part join him, or will it just duplicate itself and release a version of him, like when you copy something off a USB or download something off the internet? Is this a one-time thing, or is there a permanent copy of Afton in these games that destroying will be our next main objective? And before you say that's ridiculous, we're dealing with people possessing video games because they put their soul on a hard drive thanks to extreme agony when dying. I don't think there's a realistic here. Last time it was to set the souls of the victims free and give them peace, but now we have a whole new can of worms. With this backup, he could upload himself into an animatronic using Vanny. The virus we see described in the special delivery emails could be his first attempt. And to make matters worse, it could be his attempt at doing this while also keeping another consciousness alive within the hard drive, allowing him to make a copy of himself. This dude literally backed up his soul, his spirit. I think that qualifies as alive. And in a video game, that's the best way to live, hence why I love VR, unless it's horror. Halfway through number 5, Sister Location. In Sister Location, we come home every night to watch our favorite late night soap opera, The Immortal and the Restless, a story about Vlad, an immortal vampire, and Clara, the woman claiming to have his baby. Vlad is a clear representation of William. He wears purple and is a vampire, which are typically seen as ruthless killers. However, Clara is just the name of a character in a show, not his wife. Why would the guy meant to be William be named Vlad, but for some reason the one meant to represent his lover has the right name? That makes no sense. Anyway, pay attention to the name of the show, The Immortal and the Restless. William's goal of discovering Remnant was to find the key to immortality, and Vlad, the character meant to be his stand-in, is an immortal being, a vampire. So if this allegory is to be believed, it could be that even as far back as Sister Location, William had already unlocked the key to living forever. In it for Help Wanted. While the ending to the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience is William putting you in the suit, the ending to Help Wanted is a climactic battle with Glitchtrap as he tries to merge your minds. He appears on stage and begins the merging process, and you, with your incredible VR abilities, flip a load of switches and press some buttons. Yep. Well, it doesn't matter who wins because either way you end up merging. One ending puts you on stage with nobody in your headset, and the other one puts you behind a metal door with Glitchtrap shushing you. You didn't win. You couldn't. The instructions Tape Girl gave you only distracted you long enough so William could lock you in your own mind while taking over your body. He's alive, using your body as a vessel, like a demon. He's also probably in Tape Girl's mind, who is most likely Vanny. Two vessels with his consciousness running around? Sounds pretty alive to me. And at 3, In the Flesh. The story In the Flesh from the 5th Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call is a weird one. Most people saw it as Scott writing an M-Preg fanfic about MatPat. M-Preg meaning male pregnant. Yeah, it's a thing. Since the end of the book has something exploding from your stomach. Matt, the main character of the story, was working on a Springtrap themed VR game called Springtrap's Revenge. A character we should all know by now is one of the many personas of William Afton. This story basically describes to us how this thing works. The VR Springtrap represents Glitchtrap, and Matt, the one making the game, represents us and Help Wanted. Springtrap implants himself inside of Matt, bursting out once he's able to survive, killing us, leaving behind a tuft of yellow fur on our bodies. This whole story represents William's rebirth into society through a VR game, showing us that he is coming back. But we were all too distracted by the fact that it was literally a fanfiction about MatPat. But of course, the one involving MatPat had some deep lore hints as well. In it too, Remnant. Remnant was first described in the FNAF novel series, starting with the Silver Eyes, then the Twisted Ones, and then finally the Fourth Closet. It's basically a metal combined with the souls and extreme agony of children, first found in the original 4 possessed animatronic endoskeletons. This then becomes William's motivation, using this metal to harness the power of life and try to make him immortal. He does. He clearly was able to use it to keep himself alive despite not really being mentioned or present in the game series. He uses it to create circuit boards so he can attach himself to them in The Man in Room 1280, hence why he needed to go there before he died. He may even have injected himself with it, hence why the soul of his victim was able to attach itself to him, an organic being instead of an animatronic like we've seen every soul do. When I'm saying souls, I do mean like extreme agony, but souls is just an easier way to put it, okay? So chill out in the comments. With the exception of William, of course. He accomplished his goal, meaning that we will be seeing him again, in the flesh. Finally, in at number 1, he always comes back. I always come back, a line we're all too familiar with by now, unless you forget it because you're analyzing a security breach trailer because you wanted to make it interesting and needed more words for your script. However, this line has remained true throughout the series. He comes back after being spring-locked, as alive as ever as Springtrap in FNAF 3. He came back in Sister Location at the end credits scene after Michael's speech outside of Burnt Down Fazbear Fright, and he came back after being burnt in FNAF 6, this time as a computer virus spirit thing. Extreme agony, whatever. Now he's merged brains with the character we played as in Help Wanted and with Tape Girl, and as the arm shows us at the end of the FNAF gameplay trailer, and as the Fazbear Frights books show us, he's coming back once again. Will we be able to stop him, or are we just another pawn in his plan? Can he be stopped? Not if Scott wants to keep milking the series as much as we do. William Afton, or as he was then known, the Purple Guy's first appearance was in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which takes place in 1987. However, he only appeared in the minigames, which dated back all the way to 1983, the start of his killing spree. However, his story goes further back than that, to when he lost his wife under mysterious and unknown circumstances. William Afton is a father as well, to 3 children. Elizabeth, Michael, and another, however we haven't been able to definitively identify his name. Working theories involve Evan, Chris, and Michael, although currently we refer to him as CC or Crying Child due to his appearance in FNAF 4 being constantly crying. But this is where our story truly begins, Five Nights at Freddy's 4, which takes place in 1983, the same year William starts his killing spree. At the time, we still knew him as the Purple Guy, and before this game, at some point either earlier or in a year prior to 83, William loses his daughter Elizabeth to the circus baby animatronic, which he had designed in order to capture kids. We interrogated him, however, he avoided all questions, and without a body, we had no reason to hold him. A quick transcript from that interrogation, quote, "Officer, there's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton." After losing his daughter, William seemed determined to not lose another kid, making a series of plushie cameras, which could have just been the one camera that Crying Child took everywhere, of Fredbear plushies. He planted these sorts of cameras in 3 locations around the house, as well as various other places in the vicinity of his home and his workplace, in an effort to keep his other son away from the place that ended up taking his daughter. However, this effort proved futile, since in 1983 at some point between April and October of 1983, given that the cutscenes we see have no snow on the ground, and given that Crying Child is wearing a t-shirt and shorts, it must be spring or summer, so more realistically at some point between April and August of 1983, Crying Child was shoved into the Fredbear animatronic mouth by his older brother, resulting in his head getting crunched by the animatronic, which shouldn't have been able to happen, but that idea was never investigated for some reason or another. However, looking at the mean temperature in Hurricane, Utah, which is where Five Nights at Freddy's takes place, over the months of 1983 according to almanac.com, we can assume that this took place closer to summer of 1983, just thanks to the weather getting above 70 Fahrenheit or 21 Celsius for the rest of the world around the middle of June. This places the Charlotte killing after the death of Crying Child, since according to the Fourth Closet, the final Five Nights at Freddy's novel, Sammy Emily went missing on November 1st, 1983, which is later revealed to actually be Charlotte's original body. So, if Charlie dies in November, we can reasonably assume that Crying Child, and therefore Elizabeth, dies beforehand. Why discuss all this in so much detail? Well, it can help explain a motive. Afton could have been driven to killing by losing his children in and prior to 1983. However, this seems to also be entirely disproven based on how his kids died, since both of his kids died as a direct result of Afton's desire to kill. Elizabeth was scooped by Baby, and Crying Child was crushed by an animatronic who would only reasonably have the power to crush a skull because they were intentionally given said power. Another theory is that while he had the desire to kill, he only succumbed to his demons when his children died. However, Elizabeth's death directly disproves that theory as well, since she was particularly told not to go near the baby animatronic, and Afton had created a whole business around the Funtime robots, all of which have secret containment chambers to store away items, as he puts it. And I think that was his intention when opening Circus Baby's Pizzeria, only closing after the first day because his daughter was the one caught rather than someone else's. To find other potential motivation, we need to look at his first kill. That's typically the most significant one and provides us with the most information. Afton's first kill was Charlotte, as we've mentioned before. This could mean plenty of things, especially considering how it's his business partner's daughter, who he kills outside Fredbear's family diner, not wearing his signature Spring Bonnie suit. But while his motivation is still unknown, his crimes are known, at least during his spree from 1983 to his eventual true death in 2027. In 1983 he killed Charlotte, and then in 1985 he killed 5 more. This incident we came to know as the Missing Children's Incident, and victims we now know as Jeremy, Fritz, Susie, Gabriel, and Cassidy. Each body was stuffed into a different animatronic suit, which for some reason weren't investigated when reports came in that they were leaking blood, especially when the bodies were never found, resulting in the inability to convict Afton. After some thorough investigation from my predecessors though, we've learned that Jeremy was inside Bonnie, Fritz was inside Foxy, Gabriel was inside the company mascot Freddy, Susie was inside of Chica, and Cassidy was inside the Golden Freddy animatronic. After killing Charlotte, Afton did all of the killing inside of this Spring Bonnie animatronic, which was a Golden Bonnie animatronic present at the first Fredbear's Family Diner location where his son died, and as well as where he killed Charlotte, which could be a reason why he wears the suit, wanting to bring his original kills with him, or potentially wanting to bring his son with him in a sense. After this original original missing children's incident though, Afton went on to kill another 10 currently unnamed victims, but the original 5 were the ones that haunted him the most, causing him to flee into his murder suit for comfort, but his haste coupled with the moisture of his room thanks to failing ceilings resulted in the spring lock mechanisms failing, and the animatronic aspects of the spring body animatronic being put back in place with Afton still inside. However, somehow this would not kill him, and would instead fuel a new location called Fazbear's Fright in 2023, as well as a series of animatronics kids can order to their homes thanks to Fazbear's Funtime service, which seemed to release conveniently and in time with the COVID-19 pandemic as a way for kids to get their favorite animatronics on demand at their home. As to why they were shipping versions of their serial killer, we still don't know. This Afton animatronic hybrid, aptly named Springtrap, was the focus of Fazbear's Fright until it burnt down after only being open for a week. And after this, fires became a seemingly regular occurrence at Fazbear locations, since only a short time later another pizzeria featuring Fazbear characters burnt down after being open for a week as well. However, this time Springtrap was seemingly taken with it, and the still breathing yet unconscious Afton was taken to Heracles Hospital and was admitted to room 1280. Where after being unresponsive in his coma was taken off of life support. However, Afton somehow was still alive, and then went missing. Hospital staff assumed that Father Arthur Blythe was the one who took him, and DNA found at a nearby Fazbear Entertainment warehouse matched DNA on file for William Afton. However, this was a mass of blood, very dark blood, in fact almost black, and a series of footsteps presumably belonging to Father Blythe were found nearby. However, we were unable to locate him and are still searching. We believe that Father Blythe killed Afton, but we are unsure what he could have done to leave the body in such a state. There are also reports of a small shadow boy running around Heracles Hospital around Afton once he began responding. However, the nurse Mia is the only one to report it. Mia described the boy as, quote, a little boy with curly black hair and rosy cheeks. He had an alligator mask on and a devilish grin. When he didn't look like a shadow, that is. However, security cameras showed nothing, and nobody else was able to substantiate these claims. And at 10, losing kids. This seems to be the most popular theory about why William Afton started his whole killing spree thing, because seemingly he didn't kill anyone until after Elizabeth and Crying Child died at the hands of the various animatronics. But there are those who also treat this as a proven fact. But honestly, this is proven to not be the case, okay? It is impossible for William to be a psychotic killer because his kids died. As we learned from FNAF AR's Faz Facts, William made the Funtime animatronics around the same time as the Springlock animatronics. So, from day one, he made the robots that were intended to kill. Plus, if you want to ignore FNAF AR's Faz Facts entirely, the fact that Elizabeth and Crying Child got killed by animatronics that were designed to kill, hence why they were killed by them, even disproves that idea before FNAF AR. So, while it would make sense, it's not truly the case. And some of these other explanations may end up making more sense. Although, to be frank, I don't think that anyone actually knows the real origin, not even Scott Cawthon. And at 9, divorce. Another popular reason is possibly because William's wife left him, and that drove him crazy. I mean, being a single dad to 3 kids would already be pretty tough, but maybe this idea goes beyond this. A lot of people also assume that William killed his wife, considering how she's not around, and nobody really ever mentions her. This honestly could be an option, but only because we know so little about the home life that William had before the games, or even before 1983 when we see the sister location 8-bit scenes. So theories about this are entirely plausible, even if they just rely on human nature rather than evidence present within the games. I mean, these are human characters after all. They don't have as much meat to them as the theories involving info from the games or even from the books, but it's still interesting to see the possibilities like this. I mean, like, did William get divorced? Was his wife his first victim? Who knows? Probably not even Scott. Honestly, I doubt William's motivation is something that like he thought of when he was throwing out the last game, when he thought that the game would end up failing. Yet here we are, 9 games and like 8 years later almost. And it ain't Phone Guy. Hold on, okay, hold on. Hear me out. I think that there is still the possibility, slight chance that despite what Scott might have said, that the Phone Guy could still be the killer. Now, this is probably almost definitely not the case. This is a list about speculating, right? Well, what if William is indeed the one recording these training tapes, and what we hear is what we see play out in FNAF 3's minigames? I mean, we thought that this was possible before, but then when they gave him a name, we figured that they were different people. But maybe they also gave us Phone Guy's name without us knowing it. I mean, what other reason would he have to be an Ultimate Custom Night? Unless the Vengeful Spirit heard the recordings and knew what Phone Guy sounded like? Plus, the animatronics bashing on the door could just be when William goes to disassemble them, which accidentally releases their spirits. But the tape's cut off before he ends up getting spring locked. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I saw the ghosts of my victims, I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to vlog this. We have two different versions of Afton in Ultimate Custom Night already, so maybe there is a secret third version, aside from the one we play as at least. And it's 7 accident. Now, aside from me, maybe this whole deal was an accident, right? Maybe more so than just his kids getting killed by robots intended to kill. Maybe William's real first victim wasn't Charlotte. Maybe he did kill his wife, but accidentally. Maybe they were a bit too rough, or maybe she had a condition that made her susceptible to falling or something, and William accidentally tripped her. Maybe when that happened, in whatever way it did, William saw the life leave her eyes and liked it, but then wanted to see how it would look on a kid. So he set about making robots that would help him see it. But his kids got instead. But then he still liked the sight of it so much that he continued. Maybe he wasn't built like it, but the sight of watching someone die, maybe even his wife or lover, awakened something deep within him that then propelled him to kill. It's nothing new, it's happened to plenty of people before, but William is dangerous. He knows how to cover his tracks. Despite the absolute buffoonery of his methods, the cops were none the wiser. Or maybe he was just paying them off. In at 6, demon deal. This may be because my brain is watching too much Supernatural, but the possibility does exist that in a world with possession, living corpses, sentient biological code that can possess animatronics and people, and where spirits can possess people to keep them alive to suffer, that there is in fact also a hell and demons. And if there are demons, maybe this is why William is absolutely god insane. Maybe he sold his soul to a demon so that his business would be successful. However, so that the Reaper wouldn't come to collect, William decided to start making sacrifices. Or maybe it was demanded of him as part of his deal or something. Maybe the demon he sold his soul to wanted a little snack every once in a while, you know, some baby back ribs. Or maybe, due to this deal, he seeked out getting possessed by a vengeful spirit so that he wouldn't actually be able to be sent to hell. Or maybe that was only a theory, but he was willing to try anything in order to keep himself from eternal damnation. Just an idea. I mean, it's definitely unlikely, probably like 99% not the case, but it's still interesting. Halfway through in at number 5, meta theory. Now, honestly, this isn't possible, not even in the slightest, unless Scott had some seriously messed up story in mind. But my meta theory is just because I want a chance to yell in this video. And to be frank, this would be my serial killer origin if I was Afton, okay? What if somehow, some way, William ended up seeing the FNAF Rule 34 art that's online, specifically about his various forms, particularly Springtrap. I mean, that would be pretty blasphemous if I'm honest. And time travel does exist in the FNAF universe thanks to Into the Pit, so in theory Afton could have gone to the future and seen the absurd Springtrap fan art and then gone back and had been so flabbergasted and traumatized from seeing himself lubing up Troll Tower that he went nuts and started killing the people responsible for his horrific perversion of his life. Whether it be specific people that did that or just the demographic that would grow up to then do that, okay? It could have just been the ships as well, like seeing himself shipped with the likes of animatronics that his kids end up possessing would certainly cause me to lash out. So yeah, not possible in the slightest, but funny as hell to think about, and frankly, understandable. And at 4, sacrifice. Maybe this isn't about fan art or a demon deal at all. Maybe Afton is just a religious man who worships the old gods, more specifically, the dark ones, and believes, like some ancient cultures, that sacrifice is the key to a peaceful and long life. I mean, in the end, if this is the case, he wasn't wrong. His misdeeds end up getting him possessed, which allows him to live for much longer than he should have without food or water, after being spring locked for 30 years, and through multiple fires. I mean, if this is his motivation, this would absolutely make sense to him and actually to him be proven true. Like maybe he doesn't know that his body is being possessed, at least until Ultimate Custom Night when the vengeful spirit reveals himself. Maybe until that point he genuinely thought that he was being kept alive by the gods. Hell, maybe even after the one you should not have killed reveals himself, he's still thinking that it's one of the gods instead of one of his victims. Crazy people believe crazy things, right? So who knows? Maybe Afton just thinks he's doing the Dark Lord's bidding in exchange for eternal life, or maybe an end to his suffering after losing his wife, or something like that, okay? There are many explanations, although I doubt that this one is very likely. I still like talking about it. It's fun to explore. Getting close to the end in number 3, dream theory. There is also the possibility that none of this was real, and that everything is actually a dream, which kind of negates the whole origin story thing, because in a dream, we don't need to worry about origin stories. We just worry about what's happening in the present moment. I mean, dreaming about yourself having a nightmare is a whole other level of meta, like Inception style, but also not really, because in this scenario, Crying Child would actually be dreaming about dreaming, whereas in Inception, they don't know that any of those dreams are actually dreams. It's also interesting since if Crying Child is dreaming all of this, he dreams that he also died, but then somehow the dream continues past that, which I've never had happen before. If I die in a dream, I wake up, which in my opinion makes more of a case for him being the vengeful spirit, but I don't like dream theory because it feels cheap, so I'm not even going to entertain the thought of it any more than I have to. If dream theory is correct, which seems to be no longer the case, but maybe it was intended beforehand, then the origin of William is totally obsolete, so let's hope it's not dream theory. But ultimately, in a number 2, time loop. Could Afton be stuck in a Groundhog Day-like scenario? Instead of a day, it's however many years. I mean, this one is absolutely wild and 100% guaranteed not to be the case, but ever since time travel was introduced into the series, it's a whole other thing now. Literally, the first Fazbear Frights book had to do us like that. Anyway, what if William actually started living his life on repeat, the same thing over and over? That would drive anyone crazy. I mean, like, just look at what happened to Bill Murray. But if we ended up thinking about it, if William didn't think that there were consequences and then he went berserk, maybe he started offing people because he could, but then the cycle broke. It's absolutely ridiculous, and again, 100% not the case, but it's pretty interesting to consider. I mean, the time-traveling ball pit had the golden Bonnie and was introduced for a reason, right? Maybe it's to show that Afton is all about time travel or something along those lines. Again, no way this is real, so don't yell at me in the comments. It's a stupid idea, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. And finally, in a number 1, psychopath. There's also the classic reason that there is no reason, and that William is just your typical run-of-the-mill psychopath who has no remorse for any of his actions. Now, the vengeful spirit, referred to as the one you should not have killed, seems to prevent this theory from being true, since if he had no remorse, nobody would be considered the one you should not have killed. But remember that actually, they named themselves. William didn't actually name them because the manifestations in his head were made by this vengeful spirit who wanted him to suffer. So William might not have considered them, whether it be Cassidy or Crying Child, one that he should not have killed, or at least had a hand in killing, but they could have considered it and like, you shouldn't have killed me because now I'm possessing you. Like, it's entirely plausible that William has no regrets for any of his actions, hence why he continued his killing after losing 2 out of his 3 children to it. I mean, like, he even sent Michael down there to see his sister possessing a robot who then also tried to kill him. So, I think it's safe to say that he probably doesn't care about losing people that he should love. He probably only had kids to actually seem normal, like those who are considered psychopaths or more commonly sociopaths. They do things to try and fit in, usually. In a 10, Purple Guy. William Afton is depicted as the Purple Guy in FNAF 2, a mysterious purple figure that was the figurehead of the Five Nights series. In the Take Cake minigame, he is depicted driving up outside the pizzeria and killing a kid outside the restaurant. Finally, he lured 5 kids into the back room using cake and a yellow suit, and then, as seen in the Foxy Go 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 minigame, killed them too. They go on to possess Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, Foxy, and Golden Freddy respectively. The puppet, who is the first victim, would then give them life in the animatronic suits to save their souls. In the second game, he is implied to have been the night guard before Jeremy Fitzgerald, and after surviving a week on the night shift, he complained about his conditions, so then he was moved to day shift. Although that's weird because he's the owner of the company, so why would he be just a security guard if he was also the suit technician? But currently that's all we have. He also went to kill on 5 more kids at that location, as we see in the Save Them minigame. In a 9, Pink Guy. The Pink Guy is the title given to the version of Purple Guy seen in FNAF 2's Foxy Go 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 minigame, which is already a huge issue, since now a load of people think that there are 2 killers in the series, and seriously caused a whole group of people to believe that the 2 killer theory was canon, and some of them I'm sure think of it to this day, despite the Pink Guy never making an appearance after that game. He's slightly higher on the list than Purple Guy because, well, everyone knows the Purple Guy, but those coming into the series later on may not know about this whole pink and purple debacle, unless they binged all of MatPat's theories, in which case they've heard it before. Back in the day though, in 2014 when the FNAF 2 came out, did you believe that there were 2 killers? Be sure to let me know down below. There's no shame in it, unless you still believe it to this day, with the exception of Vanny, since technically now there are 2 killers, but none of them were ever the Pink Guy. In at 8, Mustard Man. Mustard Man is certainly an interesting variant of William. Appearing in the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, you can only see this character if you use the secret shortcut hidden in lap 10. Well, okay, I say shortcut, but it's really a hidden level at the bottom of the map. This takes you through a whole separate story process where you go to a place named Junior's, get turned away, and then you go home. Someone in gray tells you to not be so hard on him, he's had a rough day, and then you proceed to be hard on him, whoever he is, since he's broken a window and seemingly escaped his room. This is very clearly meant to represent William Afton before Crying Child dies at the hands of Fredbear, since Crying Child would have been the one breaking his window in order to go to that place again. The single house in a clearing also parallels itself to FNAF 4's main menu screen with a single house on a clearing on a hill, and this minigame also gives us the order of events of children's deaths, since it seems to be like Elizabeth is gone at this point, so she would already be dead, and this also happens right after William killed Charlotte, since it's called later that night in the game files. So the order of deaths would go Elizabeth, Charlotte, Crying Child, and then the missing children's incident of 1985. And at 7, William Afton. William Afton is the classic version of the psychotic killer that we all know and want permanently dead. At least I do. Being first introduced by name in the Silver Eyes novel and then in the games in sister location, William Afton is the one behind all the killings and is the true name of the man we originally knew as the Purple Guy. He's the one who used the yellow spring Bonnie suit to lure kids into the back room in 1985 and kill them, and he's the one who opened up Circus Baby's Pizza World to find more kids after Fredbear's closed and got his daughter killed because of it. William Afton, much like every other instance of this character, has done the same things as the other versions, but at least this time we had his true name, as revealed in the sister location opening cutscene. Quote, "There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton." And at 6, Dave Miller. In the novels, Afton is described as being overweight around the time that the serial killings occurred, but he eventually lost that weight while in his Dave Miller persona, which comes from the FNAF novels, particularly the Silver Eyes. As Dave, William is slated to be tall and was described as being sallow and thin, with his skin sagging in appearance. His face was poorly shaven and his eyes looked unfocused and sunken. His security guard uniform didn't seem to fit him properly, and the uniform was grubby and torn in places, with his name tag hung askew on his chest. The scar on his neck was also ugly and curved, almost like a perfect half moon, and the same scar appeared on the other side of his neck. In the graphic novels, Dave is depicted as having messy brown hair and gray eyes. He wears a scuffy uniform, his shirt is white with a black tie and pants, and due to the spring lock failure incident, there are endoskeleton arm marks where his arms are, as well as an endoskeleton torso. He also has the 2 scars on the back of his neck, which are also from the endoskeleton. Halfway through in at number 5, Vanny. Vanny is a follower of the digital virus Glitchtrap, a reincarnation of the serial killer William Afton, and appears as the main antagonist of FNAF Security Breach. It's revealed in the Princess Quest minigames that she was the main protagonist of Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, where she was first corrupted by Glitchtrap. She also plays a role in FNAF AR Special Delivery. Vanny wears a white bunny costume that has stitching all over it, with a large pink patch on her left hip. The costume also has a bright blue bow on the chest, and its hands and feet have like the pink pads under them, like the actual animal paws. Her bunny mask is also white, has a creepy smile and small buck teeth, along with a pair of whiskers, small eyebrows, and big glowing red eyes that appear to be spaced out. Vanny is shown to be murderous and evil as she attempts to trick Gregory into falling for a trap by pretending to be a nice and well-meaning security guard. She seems to cower in fear for Master Glitchtrap, as shown in scrap dialogue, and she just won't talk about him at all when in therapy, even though she mentions it but then immediately backtracks. She also has some uncertainty in her voice when being confronted about her task where she's supposed to be killing people. However, at the time of Security Breach, which takes place after the conversation we hear in Help Wanted, she apparently has killed 9 people at this point, as we can see from the newspaper article, assuming one of them isn't Gregory. But technically, being possessed by Glitchtrap makes her a version of William Afton. And at 4, Scraptrap. William returned once again in FNAF Pizzeria Simulator with a new design, dubbed Scraptrap. While he does retain some key physical details from Springtrap's design, there are some major differences. Unlike his previous design where his interior was mostly machinery, it's now mostly organic and shows his human skeleton as well as his flesh, and 5 bony fingers on his hands. The reason as to why William Afton is much more detailed this time around is unknown, but it could be possibly because his full body can be seen,
and one of the like boot screens, but there are more torn patches on his suit this time around with multiple exposed wires, and he lost his left forearm, half of his left ear, and the rest of his right ear. His feet now have fabric over them and 3 large round toes on each foot. His eyes don't glow anymore and he looks mostly metallic, and the mask also has some significant differences with a much larger eye socket, black nose, square muzzle, a singular pair of buck teeth in the top row, and just like sharp needle teeth at the bottom, as well as just being differently proportioned, which begs the question of how did this happen if he's still supposed to be Springtrap, or the same suit as Springtrap. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Burntrap. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, named as Burntrap according to the game files. He only appears in the canon ending though. This form couldn't be a result of Vanny downloading William's soul from the digital realm into his own hybrid animatronic of the animatronic suit, although his corpse is still partially visible. You can like see his whole jaw at this point. Burntrap's new rotten form appears to wear his old but modified tattered greenish brown spring body suit, and it has become even more severely withered, having been burnt around 3 times at this point, and he's still not goddamn dead. The suit is missing fur with the exception of the chest, hips, left foot, upper leg, and everything else was basically burnt away, and it reveals more of his charred corpse, although there is little of it left. His other endoskeleton has been replaced with the same endoskeletons that the Glamrock animatronics have, making him taller and giving him claws with sharp fingers, which I'm sure he's going to use later on. 2 of them replaced with like fleshy finger bones on his right hand though. I don't know. This is the creepiest version that we've seen so far, but I like it. And ultimately in at number 2, Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap is the digital manifestation of William Afton and first appeared in FNAF Help Wanted. Glitchtrap takes on the form of a man wearing a cartoonish Spring Bonnie costume based on Spring Bonnie's appearance from a poster advertising Fazbear's Family Diner, being like a really odd, grinning, bipedal, golden yellow rabbit. Basically, the cartoon version of Spring Bonnie. He's wearing a purple star-speckled vest, a purple bow tie, because of course he is, of course it's purple, and 2 black buttons near the top of his chest. He also has stitches across his hands and all of his joints, because, you know, it's a suit this time around. He initially appeared translucent, progressing into a less spectral form over time as you collect the 16 tapes, and he also possessed vivid purple eyes and small pupils, because of course he does, because purple. In blacklight mode, his eyes will turn blue with white circular pupils, but that's just because they're basically inverting him. He also has large whiskers on either side of his face, 3 eyelashes on both of his eyes, and large arching eyebrows, because you know what, he wants to take you to the back of the pizza joint, and then, you know, Uncle Fluffy ain't gonna do nice things. And finally, and at number 1, Springtrap. Springtrap is William Afton's first physical incarnation, appearing as a weak yet still living William sealed in a heavily damaged golden Bonnie Springlock suit. This version first appeared in FNAF 3, and he has a drab olive color, which is weird considering how olive is more green and he was originally supposed to be yellow, but whatever. He has darker colors all over like the insides of his stuff. A great portion of his right ear is missing, with a single red wire sticking out of the stump. Springtrap's entire body is torn and tattered, with gaping holes bearing exposed wires and casing, and yeah, basically, he looks very run down, like he's been sitting in the same room for 30 years. Oh wait, he has. His nose is like irregular and squarish, and he looks nothing like how Scraptrap looks, which still makes no sense to me. And this time, he has none of his feet. Yeah, that's right. The feet that he has attached are like the endoskeleton is intact, but the casing is stripped mid-shin down, and then you can like see all of the endoskeleton wiring, the actual endoskeleton, and the tendons that would have made up this section of actual William if he wasn't trapped in an animatronic suit. Keep in mind that this Afton is still alive at this point, since the one you should not have killed, crying child, is still keeping him alive, okay? So he could continue to suffer. So he's still alive at this point, and I'm tired of you people telling me that he's not, okay? Springtrap is not an animatronic. And at 10, Cassidy. Assuming for the scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, this was one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed after all is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer though, so since it's potentially a mistake but could be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm going with the top spot for this one. Well, the
first spot for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing or an absolute win, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that most likely ended with Cassidy was a mistake, since it causes basically everything else in his life to go downhill, and he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others. So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, count the missing children's incident as the mistake. And at 9, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she turns into. In the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes you to disassemble them and release their spirits, and then scare you into your spring bodysuit that crushes you, and then starts your descent into further madness. But even discounting the game aspects of killing her being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the book specifically, unbeknownst to her, Charlie is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace Henry's daughter, and it's also revealed that the animatronic is also the baby animatronic that we know and love, who can switch between her forms at will. So yeah, in the book, Charlotte is also baby, who is also Elizabeth Afton. And at 8, the fun times. There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with the built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated that plays the first time you open Sister Location is definitely showcasing this idiotic mistake. The cops know what these animatronics are capable of and were designed to do, so they instantly end up being even more suspicious of William and are going to be keeping a closer eye on him. Probably why he ends up dressing up in the spring bodysuit to start killing, which ultimately screws him over. So yeah, designing the fun times as killbots was definitely a bad idea. And at 7, Henry. Why did you think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter, that's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, so he took extra care to protect his daughter, and she still died. That's a vengeful father if I have ever heard of one, and he hasn't even needed vengeance yet. So then, you know, he's after you, or seems like it, and you don't kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, like, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you'll be clear again. If they won't put you away for 5 missing kids, they won't put you away for a missing father as well. Especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are a killer. And without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for the missing kids, so you just finally off Henry and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even a Springtrap, alright? And then you don't get burned like 3 separate times, and Michael would still be alive. And at 6, hiding spot. How the absolute living hell did he not end up, like, how did he get away with this? How did he not get caught? The smell of rotting bodies would ruin the hell out of the actual atmosphere of the pizza place because, you know, you're supposed to be trying to eat pizza. And the heat from the animatronics, like the robotic parts of their body, would help to speed up the decomposition of the missing kids. And the animatronics are in front of all those other kids every single day. There's even reports about people complaining that the animatronics started leaking blood, mucus, and other bodily fluids, as well as, quote, smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away with this wasn't important for the plot or the story of the overall games, he would have been caught for that instantly. Like, oh, we never found the bodies of these kids that went missing at this pizza place, but now the animatronics at this pizza place are leaking blood and smell like death. They also sound like their bones are being crushed when they move. So maybe we should check these out. Let's get a warrant. Oh, look, turns out we found those missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest for the murder of Gabriel, Susie, Jeremy, Cassidy, and Fritz. Boom. Oh, then they could probably throw on Charlie and a couple others on there, I'm sure. Like, boom, instantly, he gets caught. I don't get how this wasn't an open and shut case. Like, William is so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the events of the first game. Like, not even 1987, or not even 1985, alright? It shouldn't have happened. His whole plan is a dumpster fire of bad ideas. Halfway through into number 5, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about his daughter. What about getting your own kid killed? That's what I mean. Like, I don't know how William thought that this was a good idea. Like, I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in and then grab them when they're close. But like, what would its design be? Hey honey, come here, daddy wants some design tips. And then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that's basically perfect in her eyes. Like, William, why did you think that this was ever going to end well? Like, what did you think was going to happen? When has a kid ever listened to a parent? Especially at that age, when they're seemingly also loaded because you own a successful entertainment business. Spoiled rich kids listening to their dad when they say not to touch a giant robot made to appeal to them specifically. Yeah, genius idea, man. God, you're a real special kind of stupid, William, aren't you? Like, program a blacklist of kids not to steal, right? You have facial recognition tech, so come on. Just make a blacklist, like, don't kill my kids. Easy. God. And at 4, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault, since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth, and the spring locks failing were because he was crying. However, to me, there is no logical way that the animatronic jaw should have been able to crush his skull, okay? The spring locks were already active. Crushing his skull would require a lot of power to actually accomplish with just a normal opening and closing of an animatronic mouth. So the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally supercharged the animatronic, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine or a backup kill suit maybe if Springtrap or Spring Bonnie ever ended up shutting down. Figuring more power would help him out, which clearly it did, just in the worst way possible. There is no way that this was a spring lock failure either, okay? The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the spring lock mechanisms used to keep the robot parts to the side of the suit so that someone could be in the suit weren't being used. The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under the stress of keeping the parts away from the person in the suit. If it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're not being used. Keep in mind that the term spring lock in this context is referring to the actual parts that move the robot bits away inside the suit, rather than just the suit as a whole, which is also referred to as a spring lock. Well, it's referred to as a spring lock suit, okay? If I was talking about the suit, I would say spring lock suit. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanny away and prevent her from regaining control of her body. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of fail-safe that would let her escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect a kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series, you'd think that Afton would have smartened up after at least 40 years. But that's like having a self-destruct button on a bomb that you plan to use to wipe out the entire city, but you still want no one to stop you. Or like if the Flash had a steal my speed button on his suit that you could just like tap. It's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it away to fail, you know? This is one of the dumbest things that William has done, and probably the 3rd dumbest thing overall. And I'll talk about the most dumb in a couple minutes, but seriously, what's the point behind a way to undo your evil plans? One of the absolute most ridiculous things in this story. Like, I get it, so that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon, so we could have done without it. It's one of the dumbest things known to man at this point. Like, William has the brain capacity of a toddler. Penultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the genius behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in his universe, we expect a lot from William Afton. He's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer, so he should really know what he's doing, right? No. Apparently not, since after discovering that the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets. This inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims, however, causing William to panic, which is fairly reasonable since, firstly, they're freaking ghost kids, and also because they're ghost kids that he killed. So this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring lock suits, including the spring body suit that he uses to kill, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic, in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and maybe to scare the ghost kids off. However, since he's so smart, he didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, which ended up causing the spring locks that were active at this moment, since it was in suit mode, to fail, which would have killed him had he not been possessed by the one you should not have killed. Ironic. And finally, in at number 1, location. The biggest mistake William has ever made, and I will stand by this till the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his establishment. Okay, it's unknown if this was always his intention, but come on, who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic in your place of business? Dealers don't kill their best customers, right? Because it's bad for business. So why would William think it's a good idea? Literally, go anywhere else. This is like basically killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back in there while the investigation is underway. And it's not like it helped your business. You had to close the first location, resulting in you having to open another location called Circus Babies that ended up killing your daughter. So I think that this mistake is the one that caused every other mistake in the series. All you had to do was kill someone at the park. If you killed someone at the park instead, your kids would be alive. You'd be harder to suspect, and then you'd also be rich from your business. And that's why William is a dumbass.